Well, hello. Merry Christmas. If you're watching this today, it is Christmas here in northern Spain. It's actually the evening at 7:30 according to the clock, so we're about over with our Christmas day. It's been a good day here in church. We had a great services this morning, and I hope that you have had a good Christmas as well. Okay, well, this is the end of the adventure. 6 different lessons or 6 different episodes as we have walked through the story, the Christmas story, the story of the birth of the Lord, seeing it from the perspective of surprises and how God just systematically went surprising the different people, different characters that we've heard. Many of us have heard these stories our entire lives, but maybe we hadn't seen it from that perspective. And there are some lessons that we can learn as we think about this and as we realize how full our lives really are of surprises, and how that those surprises are very much part of the way God leads us down down his path for our lives. So we will at the very end go through that list of lessons that we can take away from this. But anyway, let's go ahead and start. So in the last session, we ended with those the elderly gentleman and the elderly lady, encouraging the young couple there in the temple as they brought Jesus in. And so now we're going to go from Luke. We're going to finish today going back into Matthew, because Matthew gives us a story that Luke never mentions in the slightest. And of course, it's one of the most famous ones. And it's the story of the Magi, the visit of the wise men. And so we're going to therefore go back to chapter 2 of Matthew and start reading. And we're going to see some surprises here, different people, and again, following that theme. Okay, verse 1 says, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king," by the way, Herod is a very old man now. He's very close to death. "Behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem." Wise men or magi. In Spanish, I think it says magos, which comes from that term. These were very, very important religious, but also intellectual, powerful people in the countries of farther east than Israel. And it doesn't give us much detail about them, except that they came to Jerusalem. And they said, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." So where's the surprise? Well, I guess you could say the wise men are surprised that one day they see this star. All kinds of conjecture as to what it was exactly, but probably the simplest interpretation is the best. It was a star that moved, and it was low enough for them to see it specifically and follow it, but it was far enough for them to be led by it all the way to a country far from their own. So they have the surprise of this star. They follow this star, which seems to lead them to Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. Now, these men probably have some knowledge of the Old Testament, some knowledge of the Jewish Messiah and the expectations. It comes at a point when there were some kind of vacancies in the whole area of kingship. We don't know all of the details about it, but we do know that they came to Jerusalem. How many? Again, we don't know, but probably because of who they are, and there's a lot of history about them that goes back for centuries, and because they are so powerful and so influential, so important in the whole political scheme of things in those ancient days, that even if there were few of the Magi, they probably came with a very large contingent of guards, people for protection, practical people like cooks and so forth, and those who would carry along the animals and all of the everything that would go along with it, like an entourage. So, I mean, some have speculated into the thousands. I think that sounds a little much, but can imagine thousands of people descending on poor little Bethlehem. But I think it was definitely in the dozens and possibly in the hundreds. It was quite a spectacular group of people and very impressive. A very impressive group that came to Jerusalem. So that was a surprise for Jerusalem. What in the world has just hit town, you know? And so they come and they say, well, they give their purpose. They've seen this star. They followed this star. And they have come to worship, and specifically come to worship who? The king, who they believe has just been born, to worship him. Well, surprise, Herod. Surprise is a sort of a mild term. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled. He was shocked. This was like panic mode. What in the world? A king? Herod's old. He probably has his own plans in mind. And who is this king? And all of this huge and impressive group of people coming to to pay homage to some king. Who is this? And it says all Jerusalem with him. I guess, well, there's the religious Jews and their own interpretation of things, and they're obviously not too interested in the Messiah at that point, just by their behavior. But also, that sounded like huge political turmoil in the near future with a king. Oh, well, all of a sudden we're talking two kings. Oh my, this is bad news. So everybody is surprised, shocked, and actually quite upset with this thing. So we have the surprise surrounding the arrival of the wise men. And then, okay, so Herod talks with the Jews, with the chief priests and scribes, and they say, well, the Messiah is going to be born in Bethlehem. And so he goes back to the Magi, and secretly he has a meeting with them apart from everyone else. I wonder if the Magi are wondering, what is all this about? Why is everybody so spooky? I don't know. But he tells them to go to Bethlehem, just a few miles down the hills, go to Bethlehem, and to look diligently. What does he say? To look diligently. Well, he asked them what he inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. But then he said, "Go and search diligently for the young child, and when you have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him." So maybe the Magi are thinking, "What in the world? What is all this about?" But anyway, they get their answer, and so the next surprise sort of comes in verse 9. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, that word "lo" is surprise. That's just another way of saying surprise. The star which they saw in the east went before them till it came. So all of a sudden they see this star again, and they're ecstatic because that's what's brought them maybe 1,000 or 2,000 miles, and there it is again, localized enough for them to follow and to see exactly where it is, and yet going before them. And so the surprise is the Magi go out, and when they leave the city, there's the star again. So verse 11, when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Verse 11, when they came into the house, notice they're not at the stables anymore. They're in a house. They saw the young child with Mary, his mother. Now, Joseph may have been out working or something. It doesn't mention Joseph here. So Mary is the one that gets the surprise now. All of a sudden, I mean, they've had the surprise of the shepherds, and wow. And now, you talk about the opposite spectrum of society. Now, a horde of people come in, very fancy, very flashy, very expensively dressed. These are powerful people coming into Bethlehem, looking for him, following the star to get right to the house where Mary and the baby are. And then they fall down before the baby, not before her. They fall down before the baby and they worship him. How did they do that? What did they do? What did they say? What were the expressions on their faces? I don't know. Must have been quite a scene. And then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And Mary has got to be astounded at what she's seeing. First of all, she's never seen that much money and that much gold in all of her life. I'm sure about that. And they're presenting it to her little child, her baby. And of course, all of this is confirming over and over and over again. These surprises are confirming to her. So the Magi worship and give treasures to Jesus, and Mary is the one there who is surprised. And then in verse 12, when they're done, it says, and being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. So, surprise, they were supposed to go back and report to Herod, but they get this dream. Maybe all of them got the dream. However many there were, maybe every single one of them got the dream. That would probably make sense. And they wake up in the morning, hey, guess what I dreamed? What? I guess what I dreamed. And they all dreamed the same thing, possibly. And that was, we're not supposed to go back to Herod. We need to go straight back home. And so they do that. They go. We never hear from them again. They vacate the Bible scene and the passage and the scriptures, and we never hear from them again. So they are surprised that, and maybe not so surprised, something was odd about Herod. Something was odd in Jerusalem. Why is the king being born here? They're seeing, and maybe, I'm sure they're intelligent people, very, very intelligent actually. And so this is the way it goes for them. A very surprising arrival to Jerusalem, and then to Bethlehem, and then departure. Well, verse 13, another surprise. Joseph is back in the scene. And when they had departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. He's getting quite a few dreams these days, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt. Oh my word. That had to come as a surprise. Egypt? What in the world am I going to do in Egypt? I don't speak Egyptian. I don't know what he thought, but that was the word he got. Well, Joseph knows one thing, and that is obey God whenever he says what to do. Let's do it. And up until now, that has proved a perfect way to go. And by the way, that is an excellent pattern for us to follow. When God brings to our mind what we need to do, even if it doesn't seem like what we think is the best or what we would have chosen, if we know that God has told us what to do, do it. Do it. That's what Joseph did. And he tells them, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. And so the surprise here is Joseph surprised again with another dream. And then all of this we see. Okay, so again here we find God surprising them in order to move them geographically. He's moved them already several times, really, and to specific places. And now it's, leave the country and go to Egypt. Verse 16, and here comes another surprise, the next surprise, and an ugly one. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth. He was very upset, sent forth, killed all the children that were in Bethlehem and in the surroundings from 2 years old and under. And so this brutal, cruel, absolutely unthinkable thing that Herod did to the babies in the Bethlehem area. Now, don't I don't think we need to be thinking of hundreds of babies. It doesn't matter. One, just killing one is horrid enough. But we're probably talking about maybe 6 to a dozen babies, maybe. It's a small town. There aren't that many babies there. And so, it's not maybe going to make national news and headlines because it's very, very, very low, very focused in a small little town. The fact of the matter is, the town, of course, gets the shock of their life and that horrible, horrible thing as Herod, beside himself with anger and fury, an old man, just a wicked old thing, is just trying to do as much hurt as he can, trying to get this king that has been born out of the way. And then in verse 22, we come to the last one, which we're going to conclude the series with. It's not necessarily a dramatic surprise, although it was a big thing for them. But that is in verse, so in verse 19, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph. He's getting very used to these dreams, I think. And tells him that, hey, Herod has died, so you can take the child and his mother, verse 20, and go into the land of Israel because Herod has died. So he arises and he comes to Israel, and there he finds out, verse 22, that Archelaus was reigning, and he was a brutal, maybe even worse than his father Herod, and so he was afraid to go there. And so, again, being warned of God in yet another dream, he is told to go up into Galilee. And so in verse 23, Matthew wraps it up. Remember, Matthew isn't giving us, he's giving us some details, but then leaves out huge amounts of other material. And so all he says, he goes back to Galilee and then comes and dwells in the city called Nazareth. Mary was from there. Maybe Joseph had already lived there some before. The fact of the matter is, he went back to Nazareth and established their home there. And all of that was to, fulfill the prophets that he would be called a Nazarene. So this last surprise then is another surprise that moves the special family. It moves them geographically again. And they come full circle. They've gone all the way around and they come full circle back up to Nazareth. So those are the surprises, at least some of the ones that I've seen in this Christmas story. And today being Christmas is the day that we finish this, at least the ones that, as I post them, obviously many people have many things to do on Christmas and probably won't get to watching this on Christmas, but that was hopefully, that was what I had hoped that we could do, and that's the way it's been able to be done, and six sessions in a row. And so let's finish with the lessons to take away from this whole idea of God surprising his children. Okay, life surprises remind us that we are not in charge. We are going to be surprised continually through our lives, and it's just one indication, one very clear indication that we can do all the planning we want, but there is someone over who we are not the ones that are really calling the shots. When a surprise happens, number two, you can know that God is at work. Whenever these things come to our lives, we say, okay, well, I didn't see that coming, but the Lord knows, so that's the Lord doing. And that is a tremendous source of peace. When God moves you from one place to another, because that's what has to happen, then you go to that place and you say, okay, I'm here in God's will. What do you want, Lord? Okay, number three, not all surprises are pleasant. And man, we saw that tonight with the killing of the babies, for example, and more trips I'm sure it wasn't very nice traveling back then, at least not as comfortable as it is today. Then number 4, surprises in the life of a believer are never random accidents. Sort of goes along with the second one. We do not have to feel that utter oh man, what is the word I'm looking for, that the world feels they have no idea why anything is happening. It's all just fate, it's destiny, whatever that is, whoever that is. And it's like, fatalistic. Well, what can I do? No. We know that accidents or surprises are not accidents, just random things, but there is a loving God behind them. Number 5, as representatives of Christ, we should look around to see how we can surprise others with the grace of God. And then number 6, and this is the one for tonight that we've already mentioned, but it is God often uses surprises to move us through his will and to move us geographically many times from one place to another to do and accomplish his will. So that's it. That's all for this Christmas story from the perspective of surprises. I hope it's been a blessing. I hope that you will see life perhaps in a little bit different light when things come your way that you weren't expecting, and that you will remember some of these takeaway lessons that we've done. And other than that, I guess all I have to say is Merry Christmas. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. And like we say here in the Basque Country, agur, which means goodbye. Okay, God bless you. Take care.